one run is the only thing that separates England and New Zealand in the final test of the series over there in Wellington, New Zealand. Uh, Honestly, one of the greatest test matches I've ever watched, and I think that anyone's watched. It's certainly the best one of the year so far. Arguably the best one since Headingley in 2019. That test match had everything. We're gonna go through the whole test match. I'm throwing this video together like last minute. I literally just finished watching the match. I wasn't gonna make a video on it, but you just have to after what just occurred over there in New Zealand. Yeah, overall thoughts of that Test cricket, for all the naysayers and all the talk about white ball cricket being the future, that Test match was unbelievable, and it is still the premier form of cricket, and that has to remain for years to come. But that's neither here nor there. Let's just talk about the match. So England bat first. I guess the main story of the innings was Harry Brook and how talented and unbelievably good he is. And honestly, he is the epitome of Bazball. And overall, the number 5 position really is the epitome of Bazball, because Johnny Bairstow was playing that same role for England earlier in the Bazball era, but since his injury, it's been all Harry Brook. And like, the kid is so talented. Some of his shots, he has the ability to play the Bazball shots, but then also just his natural shots, like his straight drives down the ground, his cover drives, his late cuts. He seems to be everything. He's like the perfect blend of like AB de Villiers, Kohli, and like Joe Root styles, all blended together to make this like disgusting creature that is just unbelievably good at cricket. So he was incredible. He got 184, I believe. I haven't even written down. I've just literally written down notes on some of the key points of the match, so I don't have the exact numbers. Sorry if that's what you're after. Joe Root returns to form. He looked a lot more just assured in this match. Got 95 in the second innings, 148, I believe, in the first dig, and he just played like the Joe Root of pre-Bazball, really, or even the early stages of Bazball. He just played his natural game, and that's what England need. Like, they don't need Joe Root to be having to feel like he has to play the Bazball way of, Stokes and Brook and Duckett and whoever. They just need Joe Root to bat how Joe Root has always batted. I'm surprised I'm sure that conversation's been had with him, but maybe it's just the pressure of everyone else scoring runs that run a ball. He feels like he's letting the team down if he doesn't do that. But yeah, overall he was extraordinary this match. Just looked so assured at the crease, and until he got out in the second dig, he didn't really look phased for the whole match. So yeah, class from Joe Root. I suppose the other story in terms of England's batting is that Zach Crawley. I understand that they really see Zach Crawley as a player of the future, but he's not contributing enough anymore for him to be warranted to be in the team. He literally looks in all sorts. He struggles against the swinging ball too much, and going back to England this winter, where he's going to be coming up against some decent bowling attacks, I just don't know if it's going to be beneficial for England to hang around with him. And England have options outside of Crawley at the top. Like they could take they need to try and find a way to fit Bairstow and Brook into their team. So what if like one of them could open? What if Joe Root could go up? So there's plenty of options, like Pope even. Like, there's options for England, and Zach Crawley, you can't tell me that any of those options aren't better options than batting Zach Crawley opening. He looks all out of form at the moment. And then New Zealand's first innings was quite like the first test. Everyone really struggled to get runs, aside from Tim Southee, who just came in and decided to have a whack and got 73, I believe. So yeah, he was smacking them, but New Zealand looked in all sorts in that first innings, and it was only thanks to their lower order that they ended up getting anywhere near it, near England's score, but they were still a fair way away, to be honest, at that point in the match. And then Ben Stokes enforces the follow-on, and I thought that was an interesting decision. I saw a clip of Alistair Cook talking about the decision, and he kind of shared the kind of view that I have, that it just put unnecessary pressure onto his own batsmen by making that call, when they could have just batted again and got another 200 runs, and suddenly New Zealand are chasing 400. So I understand the Bazball era is we want to win as soon as possible and we want to go really aggressively, but yeah, I think it just put a bit of pressure on his bowlers, and 41-year-old James Anderson, Stuart Broad's in his late 30s. Was that the most intelligent call? I'm not so sure personally, but I mean, if he had won by an innings and 20 runs, then we would have been calling it a masterstroke. So I don't think he'll be losing too much sleep over that one still. And then Kane Williamson gets a century, and it was just the Kane Williamson of old. He was just looked so assured at the crease. He was staunch in defence. He really waited until the balls were in his area to play the shots and get runs. He never really went searching for runs that weren't there. Even into the 90s, it felt like he was in the 90s forever, but he still was just really patient at the crease and, yeah, bided his time until he got the run. So it was a really good knock by Kane Williamson. Aided really well by, obviously, Conway and Latham as well, but also Tom Blundell. I reckon Tom Blundell's low-key the best keeper in the world at the moment. He's batting and he just bats so assured, but he can also up the levels and get really aggressive at times. Like that 100 he made in Melbourne, a few years ago. That was an unbelievable innings. So yeah, and now he's doing it down the order at number 7, and he looks like New Zealand's long-term keeper. So yeah, he's a very, very handy player, Tom Blundell. So England begin their chase, and they looked pretty good for the most part. They lost Crawley, but that's pretty expected at the moment. But then that collapse early in the day. So they lost Robinson first. Then they lost they lost Duckett, Pope, all these guys until Harry Brook comes in with Root, doesn't face the ball and gets run out when there was really no single there, to be honest. But yeah, then in came Stokes, who looked a bit sore with the old knee. Hopefully there's nothing too serious there, but he came in and him and Root just looked like they were just going to do it on their own, and eventually Stokes got out to a pretty poor shot, but he was hampered by his leg, so that makes sense. And then I suppose the next step was the game really broke open when Root got out, when Root played that shot, which, was aggressive, which is the Bazball style, but did he really need to play that shot? I'm not so sure, but look, this is how England are going to play, and they're going to live by the sword, they're going to die by the sword, and if he hits that for 4, it's an extraordinary shot, but in the end it didn't quite pay off. But yeah, it was a good innings by Joe Root up until that point. And then it got really tense towards the end. So Stuart Broad comes out, or the Nighthawk, as I guess people are calling him now, has a bit of a hit and then departs to Matt Henry, caught at third man. It was actually a very well executed plan by England there. And then Ben Foakes kind of took the lead in the innings, and I thought Ben Foakes batted really intelligently. It's pretty shameful that Ben Foakes is already 30 and he's barely played any Test cricket. He's been the Bazball keeper, I guess you could say, but prior to that, like, you look at his stats and they're bloody unbelievable. He got 100 on Test debut, he got 60 odd on one day debut, and he hasn't played another one day since. But yeah, he's a class player, and all this, there was a bit of talk that maybe Bairstow should just take the gloves, and that's the way to keep both him and Brook in the team. But I think you need someone like Ben Foakes, who's just a breath. He just looks so calm at the crease, and he just seems like a very intelligent cricketer, and he was, nurturing that situation really well until big Tim Southee bowled him a really good bumper, and yeah, he top-edged it down to Neil Wagner, and then it was really game on with 7 runs to go when Jimmy Anderson came out to join Jack Leach. And so Jimmy Anderson, I think on his second or third ball, dances down the wicket and absolutely smacks Wagner for 4. And at that point, it's 2 runs to win. And I think everyone was sort of probably thinking this could be another big famous Bazball victory for England. They're gonna do it again when they probably had no right to, not long ago. And honestly, there was a few bumpers that went past England's head that if they're a little bit higher, they're wides, and then the game's tied and it's lost, you would think. But yeah, and then Wagner bowls not his best ball, but all Anderson could do was tickle it down the leg side, and that sent the Kiwis into absolute pandemonium on the field. And to their, obviously they'd be excited. They had absolutely no right to win that Test match, and they managed to pull it from the trenches and get it done. And honestly, what a game of cricket! What a game of cricket! And you could see, like, when the game was over and the Kiwis were celebrating, Stokes and McCullum were just kind of walking out, and they had big smiles on their faces, and that just kind of sums up where England are at the moment. It's more about the way they're playing and the positivity about their cricket that is giving them the good results. So they're not being too hung up on that sort of thing, because they know that some days Bazball's going to work and some days it's not. And maybe today it didn't quite work in all, but it was an incredible Test match. The first time since there's only one other one-run victory in Test cricket, and that was the Windies and Australia in the 90s, when the Windies managed to get it done by a run. But yeah, like I said before, this is probably up there with Sri Lanka versus South Africa 2018 and Australia versus England 2019 in terms of best games of cricket, Test cricket in recent memory. Yeah, that was some unbelievable stuff, and credit to New Zealand. I don't think anyone really gave them a chance this Test match. I think everyone thought that Bazball England was just too strong for New Zealand, but they pulled through and managed to get it done. Overall, for England, Bazball takes a bit of a hit, I guess, but it's putting bums on seats, and it's so entertaining to watch. Even from an Australian perspective, like, we're watching Australia play in India and getting absolutely dusted, and you just can't help but think, if Bazball was over there and players were playing aggressively and backing themselves, maybe these other teams wouldn't be losing as much. Like, Australia wouldn't be losing. And honestly, Bazball is redefining Test cricket, and it's so good to watch. And I just feel very privileged to have been able to watch the end of that Test match, because it was an awesome finish. Yeah. So for England now, I think their eyes turn to the home summer. They have a tour of Bangladesh in ODI cricket. Completely different set of players though, so I don't think any of the Test stars are going. I think Ben Duckett might be going over for the T20s, but besides that, it's just the Test players. And then they're going back home, and they've got a Test against Ireland at Lords, and then it's all systems go for the Ashes. And I'll do a full preview down the track, but that's shaping up to be an incredibly good series, and I'm very much looking forward to it. So yeah, New Zealand win by 1 run. What a Test match. How good's Test cricket?